There's a staff in your hand, and you don't even know it's there yet. You think you're carrying stress. You think you're carrying fatigue. You think you're carrying the weight of everything that hasn't worked out, every door that hasn't opened, every prayer that seems to bounce off the ceiling. But what you're actually carrying is an instrument of authority that the Father placed in your grip before you were old enough to spell your own name. And the reason your life feels heavier than the lives of the people around you isn't because something is wrong with you. It's because most people are carrying their own choices. You're carrying an assignment. I need you to lean in for what I'm about to say, because if you miss this, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to be small in a body that was built for the impossible. Out of 8 billion souls walking this planet right now, the Father did not place the spirit of Moses on most of them. He didn't have to. Most assignments don't require it. Most callings can be fulfilled with ordinary courage, ordinary obedience, ordinary measures of grace. But there is a particular kind of son and daughter, and I'm going to be specific tonight, who was wired in the womb to lead something out of bondage, out of a system, out of a stronghold, out of a generational pattern that no one else in the bloodline ever had the strength to confront. And if that's you, your whole life has been shaped by the weight of an authority you didn't recognize yet. Tonight, we change that. Let me tell you what Mosaic authority actually looks like, because I don't want anyone watching this video to think I'm talking about volume or charisma or being able to give a powerful speech. The authority of Moses had almost nothing to do with personality. The man couldn't even speak well. He stuttered. He argued with God about his own qualifications. He told the Lord directly that he had picked the wrong person, and the Lord didn't bother debating him about it, because the authority wasn't going to come from Moses. It was going to come through Moses. There's a difference, and until you understand the difference, you're going to spend your life trying to prove you're qualified for something that was never about your qualifications in the first place. The first mark of Mosaic authority is that it was placed on him before he understood what it was for. Pharaoh had ordered every Hebrew male infant killed. Every single one. And in that exact moment in history, a mother put her baby in a basket made of reeds and tar, set him in the river, and trusted heaven with the rest. That baby floated past every crocodile, every Egyptian soldier, every form of death the empire had designed, and ended up in the arms of Pharaoh's own daughter, raised in the palace of the very system he was eventually going to dismantle. You see that? The thing that was supposed to kill him became the very environment that trained him. The empire fed him, educated him, gave him access to rooms most slaves never even heard about. And he had no idea why. He just knew he didn't fit. He looked Egyptian on the outside, but his blood was Hebrew. He learned the language of power, but his heart was bent toward the people in chains. He grew up in two worlds and belonged fully to neither one. If you've ever felt like you don't fit anywhere, like you grew up in environments that taught you things you didn't ask to learn, watched things you wish you hadn't seen, survived things that most people around you never had to face, that's not because your life is broken. That's because the Father was training you in the very system you're eventually going to confront. Nothing in your past was wasted. Not the dysfunctional family, not the broken church, not the toxic workplace, not the years you spent in places where you didn't belong. He was teaching you the language of the thing he's going to ask you to bring down later. Think about how strategic that is. Heaven didn't pull Moses out of slavery before placing the call on him. Heaven let him grow up inside slavery's headquarters. Let him eat at the table of the system. Let him see how it operated from the inside. Because no one is qualified to dismantle something they only understand from the outside. And if you've ever wondered why God let you walk through certain rooms that nobody from your background was supposed to be in, rooms where you absorb things you can never unlearn, it's because you weren't just a survivor in those rooms. You were a scout. You were being briefed. And one day what you saw in there is going to inform how you set people free from it. The second mark of Mosaic authority is that it shows up first as righteous frustration. There's a moment when Moses sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, and something inside him snaps. He looks one way, looks the other way, and kills the Egyptian. Now, I'm not saying the killing was right. The Bible doesn't even defend it. But I want you to notice what was already alive in him 40 years before the burning bush. The anointing was already there. The fire was already there. The instinct to defend the oppressed was already there. He just didn't have the training to know what to do with it. Some of you have been feeling that fire your whole life. You see injustice, and your stomach turns. You walk into a room where something is off spiritually, and your spirit gets agitated before anyone says a word. You can't sit still when you see somebody being mistreated, even a stranger. Family members have told you to mind your own business. Bosses have told you to tone it down. People have called you intense, dramatic, too sensitive, too much. They don't understand what they're looking at. They're looking at an anointing that hasn't been refined yet. The Father isn't going to take that fire away from you. He's going to refine it. He's going to take you to the backside of the desert if he has to, and let the fire of self burn out so that only his fire remains. And when you come back, you won't strike at injustice with your own hands anymore. You'll strike at it with a staff that has heaven's signature on it. This is one of the hardest lessons for someone with Mosaic authority to accept. The instinct is right, but the timing is wrong. The burden for the oppressed is real, but the method has to be sanctified. Most of you have spent years feeling guilty about the fire in you, because every time you tried to act on it in your own strength, it caused damage. You said the thing that needed to be said, but you said it in flesh and it wounded someone. You took the stand that needed to be taken, but you took it with pride and it backfired. And after a while, you started to think the fire itself was the problem. It wasn't. The flesh wrapped around the fire was the problem. The Father isn't asking you to extinguish the fire. He's asking you to surrender it. Big difference. And the day you finally hand it back to him is the day he hands it back to you with his authority attached. The third mark is that the authority is forged in obscurity before it's released in public. 40 years on the backside of the desert, watching sheep, married into a foreign family, living a quiet, anonymous life so far from anything resembling his calling that even he assumed heaven had moved on without him. And it was right there in the place no one was watching, in the place no one would ever know his name, that the bush caught fire. I need somebody to hear me on this. The bush did not catch fire in the palace. The bush did not catch fire while he was making speeches in Egypt. The bush did not catch fire while he was trying to figure out his calling on his own. The bush caught fire after he had been emptied of every shred of self-importance, after he had stopped trying to be Moses the prince, after he had accepted that he was just a shepherd in a borrowed land. That's when the voice came. That's when the ground became holy. That's when 40 years of nothing turned into one moment of everything. If you're in the desert season right now, if it feels like nobody is watching, nobody is calling your name, nobody even knows what you're capable of, stop trying to escape it. The desert is not a punishment. The desert is the rehearsal room. Heaven is going to release more authority through one son or daughter who fully surrendered in the wilderness than through 100 who built their own platforms and called it ministry. And I want to be very specific about what heaven does in the desert. Heaven kills the version of you that needed an audience, the version of you that needed the applause to feel real, the version of you that thought you had something to prove to the people who overlooked you. All of that has to die before the staff gets handed to you. Because if you walk into Pharaoh's court, still hungry for human approval, Pharaoh will buy you off with a position before you ever get to the people you were sent to deliver. The desert burns out the part of you that could be bought. By the time you come back, there is nothing the empire can offer you that you haven't already learned to live without. That is why the desert is so long. Not because God is slow, because surrender is layered. There is a layer of self that dies in year 1, another that dies in year 5, another that dies in year 15. And the deepest layer, the part of you that still secretly wanted to be somebody, usually doesn't die until you've stopped expecting it to. That's when the bush catches fire. That's when the ground gets holy. That's when you finally hear your name spoken by the one who knew you before you were born. What you just experienced was not content. It was a mirror. And mirrors demand a decision. If you are ready to go to the root, to finally understand why you think, feel, and perceive differently from everyone around you. The Secret Protocol carries the 7 keys that reveal what God placed inside you before you ever drew your first breath. Full audiobook included for every moment of your day. Plus, the Awakening Map as a bonus. The 5 stages of spiritual awakening mapped with clarity, showing where you are right now and what the Spirit is releasing in this season. Link pinned in the first comment. Not for much longer. And you did not make it to the end without a reason. My name is George, and I have to be honest with you. I spent years arguing with the Father about a calling I didn't think I was qualified for. Years. I told him I wasn't the right person. I told him there were others who could do this better. I told him I didn't have the credentials, the platform, the personality, the bloodline, the polish, and he let me say all of it. He didn't interrupt me. He didn't argue. He just kept showing up, kept opening doors I didn't deserve, kept putting people in front of me who needed something only I could give. And eventually I realized what he had been doing the whole time. He wasn't trying to convince me I was qualified. He was waiting for me to surrender to the fact that he had already made the decision long before I had an opinion about it. The 4th mark of Mosaic authority is that it confronts what everyone else has accepted as permanent. For 400 years, the people of Israel had been slaves in Egypt. 4 centuries. That is generations upon generations of children born into chains. Grandparents who died in chains. Great-grandparents who died in chains. By the time Moses showed up, the slavery was so normalized that even the Hebrews themselves had started to identify with it. They knew the rhythms. They knew the rules. They knew what to expect. And then one day, a stuttering shepherd walks into Pharaoh's court and says, "Let my people go." Think about how absurd that must have looked to everyone watching. The most powerful empire on earth, ruled by a god-king who controlled the largest army of the ancient world. And one old man with a wooden stick saying, "This is over." By what authority? By no human authority. By the authority of the one who sent him. That is the kind of assignment some of you have been carrying without knowing it. There is a Pharaoh system in your bloodline, a pattern, a spirit, a way of operating that has been ruling your family for so long that everyone has just accepted it. The poverty, the addiction, the broken marriages, the fatherlessness, the cycles of rage, the shame, the silence. Whatever the chain is, your family has been in it for generations. And somewhere along the way, the Father decided that you were the one. You were the one he was going to send back into the court to say, "This is over." Not because you're stronger than everyone who came before you, because you're the one who finally said yes. Some of you are going to be the first in your bloodline to break a pattern that has been ruling your family for generations. The first to refuse the addiction. The first to keep a marriage together. The first to raise children in the fear of the Lord. The first to walk in financial freedom. The first to honor God with your body. The first to put your foot down on the throat of something that has been swallowing your family for as long as anyone can remember. You are not just living your own life. You are dismantling a system. And the resistance you've been feeling your whole life is exactly what you would expect from a pharaoh that doesn't want to lose his slaves. The 5th mark is that the staff is just a stick until heaven breathes on it. The first time God told Moses to throw down his staff, what did the staff become? A snake, a literal, living serpent. And then God told him to pick it back up by the tail, which is the worst possible way to pick up a snake, and it turned back into a staff. That was a lesson Moses needed before he stood in front of Pharaoh. Heaven was teaching him that the thing in his hand was nothing on its own. It was just a piece of wood from the desert. But the moment God told him to pick it up, it became the most dangerous instrument in the ancient world. Because it carried the breath of the one who made everything. That's true of everything in your hand. Your testimony is just a story until heaven breathes on it. Your prayer is just words until heaven breathes on it. Your obedience is just behavior until heaven breathes on it. But the moment you start moving when he says move, speaking when he says speak, going when he says go. What you carry stops being ordinary. It starts splitting seas. It starts opening prison doors. It starts pulling people out of bondages they were never going to escape on their own. Don't despise the staff in your hand. It looks like nothing. The world will tell you it's nothing. Even you have probably wondered why God would entrust an assignment of this size to someone who looks as ordinary as you do. But heaven doesn't work with what looks impressive. Heaven works with what's been surrendered. And anything surrendered in the hand of a chosen one becomes a weapon nothing in hell can match. The sixth mark is that the deliverance gets harder before it gets easier. When Moses finally went to Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go," what was Pharaoh's first response? He doubled the workload. He took away the straw they were using to make bricks and told them to find their own straw and still make the same daily quota. And the Hebrews got angry at Moses. They blamed him. They said, "You've made it worse. We were managing before you showed up. Now look what you've done." If you've been moving in obedience and your life has gotten harder instead of easier, you are not doing it wrong. You are right, on schedule. Every Pharaoh increases the pressure when he senses he's about to lose his slaves. Every system tightens its grip right before it loses control. The increase in difficulty is not a sign that you've missed God. The increase in difficulty is the confirmation that something in the spirit realm is being shaken. You are not failing. You are advancing. And the people closest to you, who don't see what's happening behind the scenes, are going to misunderstand you. They might even blame you. Keep walking anyway. Moses didn't get vindicated until the people were on the other side of the sea, watching the chariots sink. And I want you to notice something else about that whole episode with Pharaoh. The deliverance came in stages. Plague after plague, hardening after hardening, negotiation after negotiation. Pharaoh kept saying yes and then saying no. Yes, you can go, but leave the cattle. Yes, you can go, but leave the children. Yes, you can go, but only for 3 days. Every time he gave a partial yes, Moses had to refuse the compromise and keep pressing, because partial deliverance is not deliverance. And some of you have been settling for partial answers when the Father is calling you to hold out for the whole thing. Don't let the Pharaoh in your life negotiate you down. He's going to offer you concessions that look like wins, but leave you still tied to the system. Refuse them. Wait for the full release. Heaven does not deliver people halfway. The seventh and final mark, and this is the one I want you to hold on to, is that Mosaic authority always leads someone else out. It was never just about Moses. He didn't get delivered for his own sake. He got delivered so he could come back and pull 2 million people out of bondage with him. That's the thing about being chosen. You are never just chosen for yourself. The healing you walked through is going to heal somebody else. The freedom you fought for is going to set somebody else free. The chains you broke are going to fall off entire families because of what was forged in you in the wilderness. There are people the Father is going to put in front of you over the next few years that you don't even know exist yet. People whose only chance at deliverance is the version of you that comes out of the desert. So, whatever season you're in right now, even if it feels useless, even if it feels delayed, even if it feels like you've been forgotten, you are not just being prepared for yourself. You are being prepared for the ones whose names heaven already wrote on the back of your assignment. You walk with Moses' authority. That is not a metaphor. That is not flattery. That is the inheritance the Father stamped onto your spirit before you took your first breath. And the only reason you've been struggling under it instead of standing in it is because nobody ever sat you down and named what you were carrying. I just named it. Now you have to answer. Before you close out of this video, I need you to do one thing. In the comments, I want you to write the exact words. I am putting my hand on the staff. And then I want you to name the specific bondage in your bloodline that you are stepping up to confront. Not a general statement. Be specific. Whether it's the addiction nobody in your family has ever broken, the poverty cycle, the marriage pattern, the orphan spirit, whatever it is, name it. Because the moment you name it in writing, You are doing something prophetic. You are agreeing with heaven that the deliverance ends with you, that the next generation in your bloodline will be born into a different inheritance because you decided to stand up. You were not born to manage what your family has always managed. You were born to lead them out. Now go pick up the staff